And to move on now, we have our partner keynote speaker, Mr. Salil Gauri. To deliver his keynote address on connected electric vehicles, please welcome on stage Mr. Salil Gauri, Senior Director at Oracle UK. Mr. Gauri heads digital practice within the strategy team for EMEA. He is responsible for developing digital strategy, business transformation, digital strategy, and value propositions for top-tier clients in Europe through digital maturity and digital business transformation assessments and digital disruption workshops. Some key industries he is involved in are transportation, manufacturing, and the public sector. Mr. Gauri has a strong background of over 16 years in integrating business needs and technical architecture to develop IT change programs that deliver value to the customer, the stakeholder, and the company. His previous roles involved supporting CIOs, CTOs in digital strategy and governance across corporate business and the development of enterprise architecture functions. Please welcome Mr. Salil Gauri. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. First of all, I'm really privileged to present on this, and I heard some really good panel discussions. And obviously, coming from Oracle, I'm not going to present anything on the product, guys. Let's be very practical. I've created something. It's based on the panel, what I heard. It was really nice to hear Mr. Gill talking around the EVs and how we are progressing in India on this. I've tried to create it into 3 parts, which is the automotive digital themes and trends on connected vehicles, which I'm sure most of you already know about it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But more importantly, what are the use cases and challenges on connected EV? And finally, some practical steps, and that's just my thought. I'll share one example on the use cases around BMW, how we got engaged, what we typically did there. And I do appreciate the markets are different. It's not the same market, but the kind of process that they went through, that's something where Oracle was helping them in that kind of thing and where I was involved partly. So I will mention that in just to give you a flavor of how the things have moved on there. And then some practical steps which might happen here, how you can make it happen from 6 months to 1 year. What should the companies be doing? And more, I'm talking more from not just the automobile companies itself, but the vendors around it or the network, what they should be doing in next 1 year kind of thing. And that's just to start the journey. It's not about saying this is the final answer. So just moving on the automotive themes, especially the digitizing the enterprise. I think everybody appreciates there's 90 million worth of operating profits that is due from the digital channels. And so there is the same theme is coming into the connected traveler. By 2020, 90% of the car will be connected. And so I'm not going to go through it. I think everybody appreciates it. We've discussed something around EVs. And that's why it becomes important to have that investment in that. And obviously, finally, the autonomous vehicle, which is the future. And that's a long-term view, but yeah, let's be practical. We need to head towards that discussion. But from a non-digital enthusiastic, let's talk about a connected smart vehicle. What does it mean for them? It means a product, a smart product, and something connected, right? That's a very base kind of a version of a connected smart vehicle. But when we move on a little bit further, it does involve a product system, an ecosystem around it, and a little bit more things, which we think about weather forecast or rain or the conditions in different road conditions or different kind of seed optimization. And when we take this example to a connected car or any vehicle, so I just didn't want to consider it on the car. It can be any vehicle for that matter. And that's where we need to consider the different specific conditions, and which I think Mr. Jaiswal also mentioned. Each place has a different kind of a dynamics, and we need to look into it from that way. But overall, I think the smart connected equipment will open up new businesses models. So it's not just about the connected vehicle itself. It's the overall physical equipment, and when it's connected, what does it bring into the picture? So starting off with in the past, we were talking dumb physical kind of equipment. Right now, we are on a smart equipment with some embedded systems, and finally moving on to smart equipment with networking facilities. There are some challenges. I'll be very practical. I'll mention some of the challenges in terms of connectivity and that kind of thing, but I think that's where everything is heading towards. And these are from product intelligence point of view, that's what is happening on the left-hand side. That's how it is increasing, and with the timeline, it will move into present and future from that side. So next one being more practical on the connected car, which is, we've talked about Internet of Things, that's what is there. Then there are connected equipments and the telematics and the cars. it's the connected vehicle is not anymore when do you want to do it? It's but how do you want to do it? So, okay, timeline might be an issue with, so the option we have is, should we use EV as another way of doing it, or when should we start doing it? Is there an option of doing it together? That's the bigger question. When you are already doing some investment, why don't you think about it? I'm not saying completely do the connection and have a nirvana state, but at least start on that journey kind of thing. Because otherwise, it can be just about starting from an e-rickshaw. What's the difference is that you can be just connected with EV can be just a e-rickshaw as well. That's what came into discussion. But we don't want that. We want to be, it's at an international level. Or to some extent, we want to be at some level which can be taken into the next generation. And that's about connection, telling you which sector, which areas, where's the petrol, where are the fuel stations, where fuel station, I mean the battery operated stations, or how can it, what are the best conditions and that kind of thing. So that's the other one. And the automotive players plan to dramatically increase the service offering in the next years kind of thing. So connected car is a major component in that direction. And I'll just share some of the thoughts around it, which is around several components that are around social mobile technologies. We understand that's already in effect. Connected cars, the other one, shift towards emerging markets and eroding cost price gap. And finally, what does it impact is the high-performing, reliable, flexible services, ability to handle the exploding data. And finally, the standardization and rationalization. So what does it mean in actual sense? It actually just means is that whatever we are getting out of these, it's better to utilize the key trends that are there. So if you see e-mobility is one of the trends. You have seen, we're talking about connected car. There are other trends which are already there on social and mobile technologies. Maybe just saying WhatsApp. So just a thought around that is that when you start talking about having connected cars, you talk about lots of people using WhatsApp in India, Delhi, everywhere. It's why don't we just start talking about having some kind of an interface between the social communities to saying, okay, where are the connected, where are the charging points available? What are the easier charging points, which are more of a kind of a recognition around that kind of thing. So that's just a thought. I'm not saying that's a use case, but there are multiple use cases around that which can be worked into. And there are obviously, as the connected car is growing, same are the tools and technologies to support that. So it's not just the connected car as a component itself that's there, it's the overall ecosystem that is around it which needs to be looked into from a digital standpoint. And I think the key case, for example, is Nissan's already announced a strategy around not just customer experience, but also leveraging big data and personalization. So they're thinking about it as an altogether kind of thing. I'm sure the other automobiles have done that as well. I'm just talking about as an example that I could make out. Another key one that I wanted to share was the next one is the BMW one. So how do you think they went in and said, okay, let's do e-mobility on day one, everything was fully ready and everything? Basically what we did, I think from in my experience is, we've done some workshops internally with the team in terms of, not the workshops in terms of saying, okay, what is the need of the consumer? So doing that customer journey mapping and that workshop, and that was not run by any vendor or anybody, or any McKinsey or that kind of thing. It is they owning it and running it. Yes, they were supported by McKinsey, they were supported by Oracle, they were supported by SAP and all those vendors, but the main thing is they were owning that in that form or shape and running it as a customer journey overall. That, okay, what do we need on that? Agile processes, what changed to customer-centric processes, or data as a central labeler kind of thing. And something similar, which is in the bigger ecosystem, is the Maya Viva kind of thing, which is the more of a insurance provider. So that's also linked to a connected car, that they are also looking at it. So there's a wider system that needs to be considered as part of the EVs. And what's driving an application perspective is the hunger for big data, real-time analytics. And if you can clearly see from the data, there is clear indication that driver assistance will be key in case of the EVs. Going forward, that's what, if you see from it, there's the biggest, it's still 30% going in 2020. It will be a bigger chunk, but it will be still a big number of where the driver assistance will be controlled. And all that is driven from the data that is being stored. And that's where it becomes important to understand the importance of that in the EVs, case of EVs. We can start with the simple EVs. It's not that we need to go everywhere on day one, but at least with a thought in the mind that we are putting up a digital platform, which will help us going forward. And a couple of facts, which are especially in the countries, is the around number of vehicles that are there connected. I'm sure you guys have seen most of the numbers, but I just wanted to bring a thought around that. Okay, some of the companies have started doing it in terms of driver willingness to share connected data. Even though you might think that, okay, yeah, we'll be getting all of that, but there's only 34% of it which can only be shared for research. So drivers can control and say, I don't want to share the data, which is your prerogative in the end. But there's some government data which should be readily available. So there is still, what we need to work out is, okay, what is the particular data that can come out, which is accessible from a government standpoint and the regulation standpoint, and that should be utilized. And that can't be done sitting just on saying, okay, it needs to be done as an exercise with internally. And that's not just the automobile company, but also the vendors around it. So each one of them can either do an exercise around it separately, or maybe as a combined forum like this, in terms of saying, okay, let's get into a room one day for 5 or 6 vendors together, and let's do that exercise. What's wrong in it? Let's just try from a customer journey mapping kind of thing. And I think what the message is, platform approach helps in rethinking the customer engagement. If you think about as a connected vehicle, you have the different service, family, the satellites, and that's the GPS, and the overall going to work kind of scenario, and how that can link it up with the overall connected car is the consistent user experience, flexible offers, easy to bundle, and that kind of stuff. So it's all combining that together. And the biggest example I have seen from an Oracle standpoint is Mahindra has been working on that kind of a journey together on the customer CX side of things to bring all of those things together. The challenge is linking it to the EVs. The first part has been done. Now, when you talk about the second stage, okay, let's talk about connecting it with the EVs. What are the key features that you need? What are the different things that you need to do? And finally, it's the connected car profit from a digital approach, which is more around convenience, dealer networks, infotainment, app stores, safety, and I'm sure you would have heard a lot around these kind of things. But these are some very high-level use cases around the connected car, and then linkages with the digital platform, which is your healthcare, utilities, research, and that kind of stuff. But I think what I've tried to put together is very high-level use cases, and I'm sure you guys can go back and look at it and say, okay, yeah, what are the typical use cases in this industry? Key ones are around customer experience, especially around EVs, around data monetization, and service and support that you need to build up, insurance, predictive maintenance, and fleet management. Now, these are very high-level ones. What typically we suggest doing is, or as a consulting, is that you go back and look at what's important from your perspective, and then do a prioritization on these use cases to say, okay, which use cases do you think are more practical for your organization? And then let's talk about that in that perspective. And helping that in the strategy and, okay, saying, okay, what is the value of it? I think the biggest challenge with all of this, what I've seen from, is these use cases everybody understands, yeah, we need to do this, but there are some practical challenges in India. Even I've looked at it from an Indian point of view, is the connectivity issues. The biggest one is that even though we can say connected car, you might not get a data somewhere down the line. So we need to think about offline and online mode. Does it work? How seamlessly does that work? Obviously, we've talked about security, regulation, compliance. Biggest one is security around the hazards thing. There has been lots of malware attacks and that kind of stuff. So that needs to be given a due diligence in terms of that. I'm not just painting a rosy picture that connected car is giving you everything on day one. It's the challenges that we need to consider as well. And the biggest one is the investment model. All these use cases, what are you getting out of it? You can give a seamless experience on CX to a customer. Are you going to get any extra money on that? You're going to give, okay, it's good to have the electric charging points and that kind of thing. What are you going to get out of it in the end? So that's the business case for not just the automobile vendors, but also for the other overall eco platform. Where does it come from? And finally, the cultural change, which is the biggest thing I think that came into discussion today, are the consumer ready for that? Consumer might not even take that. But more importantly, what I will say, it's within the organizations. It's within your own organization. Is your organization ready for it? And it's not going to change on day one. So there are some thoughts from my side around what I've seen with other banks and other companies who have been able to embrace digital or connections is more around this, is how can they start on the journey, which is now. So I'm talking about how if we need to get into the EV, what would be your first step tomorrow going forward? I suggest is have an idea engine internally for employees and dealers network to generate ideas on transforming connected cars. That's very simple in terms of just asking them for ideas. All of you, if you go back and sit around in your coffee shop or a bar for that matter, the first question you're going to say internally is, because I asked this question yesterday to my family, okay, if I give you a connected car tomorrow, what do you need? The answer was only the charging points, it's nothing different. I already have my Google with me. It's okay, you can bring the Google on the dashboard, that's fine, that's excellent. That's what we are going to do. Nobody else knew what else can be done with it. So it's even going back and thinking around it, we still couldn't get the answers, to be honest. What are the key things that you need? Okay, it's a good customer experience, good to have, we need connected car and everything. What exactly is your digital transformation? Second one is think about from an innovation workshop kind of thing. Why don't you do it internally and look at it more as a persona based? What is a daily automobile user doing? What is a mother? What are the parents doing? Example being Renault has come up with, I think, an example on security for when the children are going around, that the drivers and that kind of thing. So that might be just one example on connected car. Do you really think that's your company's value? That what you want to do? Why not? And finally, multiple mode traveler, which I think came under discussion in the panel, that somebody coming from a tube, coming from a underground, how does they connect? What do they do? Maybe they use Uber, maybe they use Ola, and if it's not more than 100 miles or per day, 100 kilometers per day, it's not worthwhile. So those are the cases that we need to see. And finally, strategy and case for change, which is enable an internal team for mix of business and network and a practical roadmap with prototype and the business case. And I'll suggest have a business case for each use case, definitely, kind of thing. And I think if I have time, I'll just quickly cover one example on connected car. I'll quickly run the slides, guys. Happy to share the slides, but this is something which we have done on connected car for insurance propositions. It's not just a very high level. We went in and said, okay, this is the use case for connected car and insurance providers. How do you do the mapping on different products and what are the business values? So on the right, you will see the insurance benefits, customer benefits, and that kind of thing. And I'm just suggesting that can be done with your organization, yourself as well, in terms of saying, okay, if you're talking about connected car use case for insurance, this is how. I'm sure the insurance is not the first use case, but as an example, I just wanted to share the level of depth you can get into. And the other variant is the predictive maintenance kind of thing that, okay, if you're planning auto service planning, what would you need? You would need a mobile device, you would need different kind of information discovery, IoT, gateways, and that kind of stuff. So just a thought, I think I'll just leave that at here. And finally, one slide on the business value, that if you're doing the business benefits, what would you get? This is a kind of a typical kind of thing which you would do on a business case at that level, that, okay, if you are, for this use case, there will be financial incentives on personalization of policies. I'm not saying this is directly applicable for connected car, but this is one example where connected car and insurance, we have done that kind of thing. That, okay, there will be an expected growth of this much. And to be honest, if you go back and say, how did you reach that number on a benchmark, 16 to 15% or 1.6% revenue? Nobody has it, not even Gartner, not even any studies have been able to do it. It's going into the research mode and saying, okay, if Nissan's done it, or if XYZ has done it, what was the typical percentage growth? Or, for that matter, if a similar thing was done by something else, what would be the typical growth? You won't get a simple answer saying, this is the benchmark, guys, for this use case, and this is the growth that you're going to get out. So it's a little bit of a study that needs to be done on that detail. So that's what I had to share, guys. Happy for any questions if you have. Okay.
5 minutes for questions and answers, if anyone has any questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for such an informative document. My question is a little more specific. So, you're talking about connected cars and probably getting information from cars maintenance. From an EV perspective, have you talked to maybe OEMs to maybe come up with battery management solutions where maybe information on battery health or the way, say, the customer is driving a car, that can go maybe to an OEM database and there could be an Oracle analysis or something like that. What has been the response, number one, of some of these OEMs that you have talked to, or if at all they've even thought about it?
So two things. One is the fleet management side of things. There has been a talk around fleet management. So, sorry, the battery management specific thing is not there. I'll be very honest. I've not heard it. Maybe there is. I can come back to you on that. But the fleet management is something which we have been discussing around, saying, okay, if this is a particular kind of a fleet, how is it being managed? And then there are different products or analysis in terms of saying, okay, if we need to do fleet management, first of all, the data coming out from that fleet should be secure. So it's a tie-up of security and the fleet management together. There are different various products and technologies available for that to address that kind of thing. In terms of the battery operation kind of thing, that's, I think, if I be really honest, I've not seen even that being picked up because if you see from a European economy, it's not batteries. It's mostly the charging points. So we have talked about the charging points. Yes, charging point discussion has come into discussion, but not as a battery that, okay, there's battery storage, but battery levels have gone down and that kind of thing.
So you're saying that network diagnostics and all
Network
that,
diagnostics,
that
yeah.
has happened. It's happening in India?
That's happening definitely in EU. There's no doubt about that. And it's mostly in Germany and UK where that kind of thing is. And the other key thing I would like to highlight is the utilities who are doing that. So there is a lot of focus from the utilities rather than the car manufacturers to do it. That's why I'm talking about the overall footprint. It's the utility who is installing these things and giving free charges to you in terms of free 1 year kind of thing to do these kind of stuff. And I'm sure that's what you say. No, I'm talking about European from that sense. So that's why I'm trying to understand, okay, from an Indian utility company, how is that possible to do that? And that's the ecosystem I'm talking about. Yeah, sure.
I'm Sanjeev, ex-Tata Motors and General Motors. I'm just trying to understand that on the connected car technologies, there's a lot of work which has gone into Europe, specifically BMW was leading a lot of work on that. But in my perspective, the main focus there was safety and security on the autonomous cars, which they were doing it. But as a customer, what is that benefit European customers are looking for, and you feel that that should be the same type of a profile coming in India also, that same type of expectations? That what are the 3 or 4 things which European customers are looking from these connected car technologies? And that can percolate down to India also in the future.
I think other than safety, what I've seen, they're looking into more connection to the world. I think the networks, the telecom networks are much more better in that sense. So that's what they're looking at right now. One is safety, yes, that's definitely the case. But the other one is the connected car, and the third one, which is more around saying, okay, if I need to go ahead and do something around quickly answering, doing some ordering or those kind of things, getting connected to the third world. And that's coming in and saying, let's do something on the internet quickly. And that's something they're looking at doing it, because that's where it's heading towards.
And on the chips, like basically on the digital cars, and when we talk about the General Motors OnStar program, so how do you feel that OnStar program benefits? Because OnStar is one of the most successful program of General Motors in US. And they want to replicate on the world, but they could not move ahead. So is they conflicting each other, or what's happening? Because that's also sort of a connected car technology with a single button.
Is there, I'm not sure about that OnStar program from General Motors. I've not seen specifically on that, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that, yeah. I think the focus is more around the connection to the world, if that's the possibility, and something around the IoT coming in from the manufacturers. That's the biggest focus right now, is that, okay, whatever we are producing, the data that's coming out from the consumer standpoint, how that can be utilized, and monetizing that data. So we have given some case studies around monetizing of that data. So that's an interesting one, is that let's grab the customer data and try to sell that. Yeah.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know there are more questions, but as I said earlier, we are running very short on time. So I would like to thank you, sir, for being present here today. And may I invite Mr. Sohinder Gill, sir, to please come and felicitate Mr. Gauri. Is he here? Okay. So Anuj, would you do the honors, please? Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for Mr. Salil Gauri. A little louder, please. Thank you so much.